good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, July 29th, 2014. This will be our last show of our morning show for July, ever, 2014. It is 55 degrees here in Indianapolis this morning. A little chilly. I like it like that, though, so I'm not complaining at all. Looking through the temps coming up over the next week or so, it looks like we're not going to get out of the upper 70s much at all. My tomatoes aren't going to like it, but it is what it is. Most of the Midwest will have chillier temperatures than normal. We saw some storms coming in that came in over the last couple days. Some really severe lightning storms, which were absolutely stunning. But a little dangerous. I know there were some instances of some people getting hit with lightning. So, as always, it's nice to look at. It's pretty. It's ooh and ah and all that, but it can also be very dangerous and detrimental to your health. So just stay alert and pay attention to what's going on out there. Still some wildfires brewing out in Idaho and the Pacific Northwest. It's sad to see what's going on out there and the loss of homes, and luckily in the area that it is, there's not a whole lot like when Colorado here a couple years ago. That one hit a little close to home as I had a cousin that lost her house, but she's just now getting the floors laid and the walls up for her new house. So, and that's been at least 2 years. So, not fun. Don't usually have to deal with that kind of stuff here in the Northeast. So, been blessed there. Definitely not something I would look forward to. So, not hearing of anything interesting in the weather coming up over the next week other than some disturbances in the force, but we'll keep an eye on and post them up when we can. I know there were some tornadoes yesterday that hit Maine. It's happened before, so it's not like it's the end of the world or anything. But it's not interesting, but a little unusual to see a a tornado hit an airport in New Hampshire and then migrate up into Maine. So definitely stuff to watch out for. But had a tornado too touch down in, I think it was Virginia, over the last few days that hit a campground. Several people were killed. And if you're out there camping, I know last week I said, get out there and go camping and test your preps out. Still got to pay attention to what's going on around you. Make sure that you have shelter in place if you need it. An RV or a tent is not going to stand up to a tornado, obviously. So make sure usually a campground has some kind of secure structure that you can get to. A deep ravine, anything like that is better than nothing at all. So always plan first and then have fun. Situational awareness, talked about it millions of times in the past. You go someplace, make sure you know what's going on, get a plan for escape or whatever, and then go off and have fun. It's not like you're living in that, oh my God, I'm going to panic and live in that tinfoil world and freak out and be paranoid the entire time. That's not how it works. Get a plan, work the plan if you need to, but at least you have something in place. But some things in the news. Just going to scroll down through some interesting things that I found, and then want to talk about getting some perennial vegetables in your garden, stuff that you don't have to plant every year. Comes back by itself, that you can start and think about to replace some of the vegetables possibly that you use now. And then I want to talk about this Ebola issue that's going on, and just pandemic preparedness in general. So, some things in the news. I seem to have a buzzing noise. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. But if not, we're going to move forward. So, some things in the news that just gave me a red flag, heads up kind of thing. The first one is two stories that hit yesterday pertaining to all the illegal immigrants that are coming up out of Mexico and South America. The first one is out of the Washington Times, and it's pertaining to illegals demand representation in the White House meetings. Illegal immigrants picketed the White House Monday afternoon, calling on fellow immigrant rights advocacy groups to refuse to meet with the Obama administration until President Obama specifically includes illegal immigrants in any future meetings. We are among the millions of people who will either benefit or be harmed by the decisions the president makes, and we are here to represent ourselves in any future negotiations, reported one of the organizers in a statement announcing the action. Billing themselves undocumented immigrant leaders, the organizers said they will erect a picket line to symbolize their demand. I, had to check and see if this was actually a real story or not, but it is out of the Washington Times, so it's not like it's one of those tinfoil hat, well, you can take it or leave it for what it's worth, but the groups are fighting to keep momentum in the immigration debate, which has seemingly turned against them in recent weeks as Mr. Obama tries to deal with the surge of illegal immigrant children and families across the border. That has complicated the president's stated desire to claim executive powers to halt even more deportations for illegal immigrants already in the interior of the U.S. The immigration advocates had hoped he would halt all or most deportations, but Mr. Obama is under pressure to get tougher on illegal immigrants in order to avoid sending the wrong message to Central Americans who are surging across the border, hoping to gain a foothold in the U.S. I am totally not against someone coming to the United States, first of all. There's just certain channels that you need to follow. Just picking up and leaving and breaking the law is not one of them. Go back through it. Most of our ancestors, I have the documentation that mine came here legally, with proper documentation. They came, they did not demand that whoever was here change. They adapted, got jobs, became a viable part of society. I don't know why illegal immigrants are picketing the White House and not being removed. I think it would clear up some of the issues that we're having. But definitely an interesting story. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But you have to question why, quite honestly, they are here and why nothing seems to be getting done about it. So keep an eye on it. Several reasons, like I said. One of those being the documented cases of certain diseases that are coming along with them. So, and the fact that our government also does not seem to think it's necessary to inform the citizens of the United States, the residents here that are here legally, where they're being shipped to the point that they're shipping them across the United States secretly. Huge concerns. Like I said, just red flags, something to keep an eye on. The next story came out of southern Texas. Let's see if I can get my computer to work this morning. And neither one of us had a lot of sleep last night, so you'll have to pardon us. This came out of, where is this? KRGV, which is the local resident news channel in southern Texas. And I seem to be swirling. There we go. KRGV.com, Channel 5, News ABC in South Texas. But this came out of McAllen. Rio Grande Valley emergency management officials are concerned that the large amount of people here illegally may pose a dangerous situation in the event severe weather like a hurricane threatens the valley. People who cross the border illegally have long been part of conversation in law enforcement circles. But now emergency managers in McAllen have questions of their own in the event of a hurricane. You have extra sheltering areas and detention centers right here, said Barry Goldsmith, Brownsville National Weather Service Coordinator. And are they able to withstand the wind? Are they able to withstand floodwaters nearby to get humanitarian relief? All of these questions come with the responsibility of keeping illegals, crossers safe in the event of a hurricane. City officials, along with several emergency managers valley-wide, came together to analyze the numbers. The valley's population exceeds 1.3 million people, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Add to that another 4,000 people here illegally, and how do they manage the extra bodies? A meeting this week in McAllen set a plan in motion. And this is the part that concerns me. Not the fact that they're, actually talking about how to help people. Don't get me wrong. I think that's important. But this is the part that you really need to pay attention to. And this is in quotes. Before the public gets their mandatory evacuation, the plan is to get all these unaccompanied women and children out of the valley and to safer ground, said Goldsmith. Where illegal crossers will be evacuated will be kept private. Recent protesters have threatened their safety. This plan helps keep the bigger picture in mind, evacuating everyone safely. We don't have a situation like what happened in the Houston-Galveston area where they evacuated from Rita and people actually died on Interstate 45, said Goldsmith. They were not able to go through traffic and were running out of gas. Keeping everyone safe, whether you're legally here or not. But they are picking and choosing, it looks like, who they're going to inform of an evacuation first. Definitely not the tax-paying citizens. And, take it for what it's worth. Every life is valuable, but when they're going to pick and choose who they're going to tell first and evacuate first and get them out of harm's way over tax-paying citizens here, you know what that's going to cause. I'm surprised, and I'll just keep digging into this, how much of an issue this is going to cause down there. When you hear reports such as this, then you understand why people are upset and sometimes don't make the best judgment on how to handle the situation. And you can understand why people are getting threatened with their safety. When you're choosing someone else's children over mine, when I have worked all of my life in order to pay to make sure that certain things happen, I can understand why people are upset. So definitely something to keep an eye on top of everything else that's going on in the border state. All right, so on from there, the North Korea. The first time I read this one, I just had a giggle. But then you stop and you think about it, and you gotta wonder what else is going on. But North Korea yesterday threatened a nuclear strike on the White House. And I know there are many people out there that say, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. Just make sure that, certain people are there first. But top-ranking North Korea military official has threatened a nuclear strike on the White House and Pentagon after accusing Washington of raising military tensions on the Korean peninsula. The threat came from Wang Pong-so, director of the military's General Political Bureau, during a speech to a large military rally Sunday on the anniversary of the armistice that ended the 1950-53 Korean War. You start making threats like that, and North Korea is known for them. I know there are some people that were like, oh my goodness, we've been threatened with a nuclear strike, and then you realize that it's North Korea, and it's you get a chuckle, like I said. But, you still get a question, who gives them the balls in order to say stuff like that? Because, do they do it on their own? Are they stupid enough to do that? They've done it in the past with different aspects, but usually it's because there's somebody bigger and bolder behind them, allowing them to do so. So with everything that's going on out there, I mean, and there's a ton of stuff going on in the news. People are getting it from all sides with the issue that's going on in between Gaza and Israel. The UN Security Council has stepped in, so it'll be watching to see what happens with that. With the tension in Syria and over the last years, what's going on there. Russia just seems like it's been remarkably holding itself back from getting involved in any of this to a certain degree. Could they come in and wipe most of this stuff off? Yep, pretty much so. And it seems like they've just been, chided into being involved by multiple aspects of it. We saw the plane that went down last week. Still a lot of information up in the air on that, on what plane it was, who was on it, how it happened, who did it. It's just all the way around. So if you guys are out there following the news at all, we do have a blue Facebook page that we post this stuff up to. PigMyNews.com gives a lot of information. If you're not on the Facebook page for UCY.TV, get on there. There's a lot of alternative news sites that they post from that definitely you can get information from that might not hit mainstream media because it's so filtered. They only force feed you what they want you to know, and then you're left hanging, wondering what the hell's going on. So you can at least try and piece things together and be able to, it's kind of like spaghetti. Let's throw it on the wall and see what sticks, and then make adjustments accordingly in your preps. So, of course, one of the biggest news stories that's been out there lately sadly took a turn for the worse here the last few days, and it's this Ebola issue that's been going on over in Africa. The top doctor that's been trying to treat people over there, unfortunately, has contracted the disease itself, and a lot of disheartening news out there, but an Ebola outbreak that has killed more than 670 people in Africa is now taking a toll on doctors and healthcare workers battling the deadly disease, including 2 Americans. Kent Brantley, 33, an American doctor who has been working in, Liberia since October for the North Carolina-based aid organization Samaritan's Purse, is receiving intensive medical treatment after he was infected with Ebola, according to a news spokeswoman for the group. Melissa Strickland said Brantley, who is married and has 2 children, was talking with his doctors and working on his computer while being treated. A second U.S. citizen, Nancy Whiteball, also has tested positive for Ebola, Samaritan's Purse said. Whiteball is employed by mission group SIM in Liberia and was helping a joint SIM Samaritan's Purse team treating Ebola patients in Monrovia. Whiteball is married with 2 children, also the organization says. Both of them tonight are in stable condition, and it goes on from there. But definitely, when you hear of the doctors now getting infected with all of the precautions that they've taken, you gotta, take a pause for a moment and wonder your chances of getting through anything if we had a pandemic here in the United States. It's questionable. There's a lot of information going around on how this is being contracted back and forth. Typically in the past it's always been by contact, but there's been a lot of reports out there. Is it mutating? Is it become airborne? So, do the research. I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm not a doctor, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. Not that it would have done me any good because I didn't get a lot of sleep anyways. But form your own opinion and then adjust accordingly. But pandemics, just something that concerned about right now. Probably the hot button on my list of preps because of all the information between what's coming over the border. We've been talked in the past about TB, about measles, cases of lice, just all kinds of stuff. And not something that I want to have enter into my home or have to deal with my family. When you're looking at this kind of stuff, I know we've talked about it on Prepper Chicks After Dark, Plain Conflicted, and what would you do if you found out the nearest city to where you live, there's rumors that there's a pandemic going through. It's a choice that a lot of us really need to pause and really need to think about, considering everything, especially when we have our government taking people quietly and spreading them out in mostly, it looks like, large population areas. Not the place to be. And I'll be brutally honest here. If you live in a city right now, if you have any chance at all to get yourself out of there, it would not be a bad idea. When you have so many people packed together so tightly, it's just a recipe for disaster. And hugely concerned about all of the news. One story here, one story there. You don't put it together, but you start looking at the full scope of everything that's going on. And let's just say it's sparked and moved to the top of my list of issues, far and above anything else. So, what can you do as a woohoo! Not sure where that's coming from, but okay. Isolation and treatment. What are you gonna do? So isolation and treatment is appropriate with any kind of pandemic is definitely necessary. If it's the flu kind of with the Ebola, you're going to have to watch there because the symptoms for Ebola mimic the flu, and it is what? August, let's just call it. It's already August already, and you've got kids going back to school. And I know when my son, our youngest, or any of our children returned to school, it was just a nightmare. It was like clockwork. You could time it when they were bringing home some kind of sickness. It usually was about a month after they went back. When the issues began, and usually one would start, and then it would just go through the entire house. So you're bringing in all kinds of diseases, and now we've got our children going back to school, and supposedly a lot of these illegal immigrants that are coming across the border, they say in the news that they're women and children. I think we've seen differently. So, what are your options? You're sending your child back to school, homeschool. Learn the state laws for where you live. And Indiana, it really isn't. There's not a whole lot to have to deal with. You just have to inform the school that you're taking responsibility for your child's education, and then make sure that you're documenting what kind of work that you're doing. But definitely something I really honestly want you to think about is what's going on in the school systems when it comes to spreading diseases. When we would walk into the school itself, it was just, a big petri dish. You walk in and it was easily in the 80-degree temperature range, which is just going to spread anything like wildfire. Of course, you know how kids are. Anything that's coming out of their nose is usually wiped on their hands, which is spread throughout the building. I don't care how much cleaning that they do, it is what it is. But definitely something, it's our responsibility to keep our kids safe. But so, yeah, anytime you're dealing with something like that, it definitely look at home quarantine of any of your family members. So that means that you're going to have to learn different, hang on one second here, I'm getting ahead of myself. Here's from the government website. Let's start there. It's from flu.gov on handling a pandemic. Number 1, isolation and treatment as appropriate with influenza antiviral medications of all persons with confirmed or probable pandemic influenza. Isolation may occur in the home or healthcare setting depending on the severity of the individual's illness and or the current capacity of the healthcare infrastructure. 2, voluntary home quarantine of members of households with confirmed or probable influenza cases, and consideration of combining their intervention with the, with the use of antiviral medications, providing sufficient quantities of effective medications exists and that a feasible means of distributing them is in place. 3, dismissal of students from schools, including public and private schools, as well as colleges and universities, and school-based activities, and closure of child care programs, coupled with protecting children and teenagers through social distancing in the community to achieve reductions of out-of-school social contact and community mixing. 4, use of social distancing measures to reduce contact between adults in the community and workplace, including, for example, cancellation of large public gatherings and alteration of workplace environments and schedules to decrease social density and preserve a healthy workplace to the greatest extent possible without disrupting essential services. Enable institution of workplace leave policies that align incentives and facilitate adherence with the non-pharmaceutical interventions outlined at the website itself. So, the government has in place, or they say they do, the necessary steps to break up the populace, if you want to call it that, to keep the disease from spreading. My problem is, and we've seen this in the past, is the the economy plays into that. Are they going to do that in the instance of, say, a huge football game? It's going to cause quite a commotion. So, don't take it upon yourself to take responsibility for yourself and take the responsibility to keep your loved ones safe. We saw it this past winter where people waited for the weather stations for the government to make the decision for them, and by then it was usually too late. Pay attention to what's going on in the news, and you make the choice and take the necessary steps to keep your family safe. Usually by the time the government gets involved or it hits mainstream media, we're beyond the steps necessary to ensure that your family is not going to be affected by it. I can't stress that enough. It's your responsibility. You need to step up and take that responsibility. So what can you do? We've got a pandemic going on. Before it gets to that point here in the United States, I think it's necessary that you look at your preps at home. What are you going to need in order to shelter in place for any length of time? First things first, definitely going to need water. A rule of thumb is 1 gallon of water per person per day, and that's just to hydrate. That's not for hygiene, that's not for personal hygiene, that's not for cleaning your house, that's not for anything other than just drinking. You add into that the chance of someone getting sick, and you understand how much more water that you're going to need. If you have nothing at all, I would implore you to at least get a couple weeks worth of water stored in your house. And there's a multitude of ways that you can do that. Bottled water, jugs of water, whatever, 55-gallon barrels. The more that you can get, the better off that you're going to be. You go on from that, and we can go down the rabbit trail, but I'm going to stop before we do. But think about if you need to replace that water, how would you go about doing that? You need some kind of catchment system if you're going to be catching it outside, or an alternate form to replace it. On top of that, if you go that route, then you're going to need to learn about purification, filtering, and all of those things. So at least get some water. Another thing that you're going to need is food. Please do not go out and purchase the big multi-$1,000 packages of dehydrated, freeze-dried foods. You don't know how to cook with it. It takes a lot of water to rehydrate food that's been dehydrated. It's going to be a shock to your system. What you need to do is sit down and write out a menu plan for 1 week. Include breakfast, lunch, and dinner of foods that your family already eats. Now, would you look at making sure that they're healthy? Yeah, I mean, you're not going to want to, we're going to have candy bars for breakfast. It shouldn't work like that. And in any kind of situation, you need to try and stay off of sugars and white starches. Those are detrimental to trying to allow your body to recover from any kind of disease or keep it stronger. But sit down and write down a meal plan for 7 days, what you actually eat. Get that stuff, get a tote, put it in there, put the recipes in there with everything you need, including oil to cook, if you need spices, anything like that. Get it in a tote. You've got a week's worth of food now that you know your family's can eat. If something happens to you, the recipes are in there, they know what to use this stuff for. Then do a second week and go as much as you can, as fast as you can. Other things that you're going to need that's really important here, and it's a little alarming. These doctors over there had the best equipment that they could possibly get, and that's just me assuming. But first things first is you need some face mask. And I know in the past it's always been an N95. They do make N100s. Definitely something that you need to get. And FYI, they do expire. So don't think that you're going to buy one and you're going to continually use it nonstop. You need to get multiple face masks. Unless you get the big industrial, I know usually it's what the Israeli gas mask kind of thing that they have out there too. Those filters also expire. Just make sure that you have enough on hand. But definitely a face mask is something that you're going to need. Make sure that if you're going to have to shelter in place, that if you are on medications, that you have everything. You have extra prescriptions. A lot of times if you talk to your doctor, I wouldn't necessarily share the concerns with what we're talking about here because I question some of the things going on out there, and it seems like OPSEC is becoming very, very, very important. But talk to your doctor and see if you can get an extra prescription or be able to store up a little bit so that way you have it on hand in case you cannot leave your home. And then it's always good to have fluids for electrolytes, extra vitamins, those any kind of non-prescription over-the-counter drugs that you can get in case you do end up with the sniffles or a cold or something that's not a pandemic that you want to be able to treat and keep your family comfortable. Another thing that you need to do is take a room in your house that you can quarantine people in if you have to. Something a lot of people don't like to think about, which will go into my next suggestion, but take a room, a bedroom, preferably with its own bathroom if you have access to something like that, and quarantine it off. Make it a sick room. Put plastic up over the doorways so that way that room is specifically set aside to deal with someone who's sick, and that way they're not out around with the rest of your family. But one thing also that needs to take place is a conversation, and one of those conflicted conversations that you need to have is what happens if someone within your family does pass away. How are you going to deal with that? And how would they prefer to be handled? Do you call the authorities and have them deal with that? A lot of our populace now is not used to having to deal with disposal of a body. So how do you go about doing that? That's information that you need to gather now, and that's information for a whole nother show. But we do have up on our website, you go to prepperchicks.org to our downloadable files section. There are free downloads on there on how to properly not cause further disease. Might be something you want to go check out and get your hands on and printed and put it in your prepper binder, because you get the authorities so overwhelmed with this going on. And I live outside of Indianapolis. If something would happen and we had a pandemic here, our authorities would be so overwhelmed, would they even get to your house to help you take care of if someone would pass away? So it's not like you can just leave them lying around. It's going to cause problems. So you're going to have to learn how to take care of the body and make sure that nobody else gets sick from it. So definitely something you really need to think about. One thing besides the over-the-counter medicine that we talked about just a minute ago that I want you to think about too is being able to utilize alternative medicines, alternative means of disinfecting. One thing that I've been using, and I do buy it already pre-made because I am affiliated with the company, just so that there's a open dialogue there, is thieves oil. And we do have a link to it on our website. You can do it there, but you can also make it yourself. And all it is it's an equal part mix of eucalyptus oil, rosemary, cinnamon, clove, and lemon. And like I said, equal parts. And then you can mix it with some kind of a carrier oil. Like olive oil is a good carrier oil. So whatever you have handy. Definitely would not use something like vegetable oil. I think olive oil would probably be your best bet. But you can use this for cleaning your house, for disinfecting. It came about, years and years ago. Supposedly, the backstory is when the bubonic plague was going around, people were going out robbing the dead bodies, and somebody came up with this oil. They call it thieves oil because one of the robbers came up with it to disinfect himself after he was out robbing the dead bodies, so he didn't get sick. So I use it in my house. I do buy it already made. Could be a little different than the homemade stuff, but absolutely swear by it. I've seen it stop things such as mold, which is hard to stop growing because a lot of people use bleach on it when they don't realize that it's the roots of the mold itself that you need to get down in and you need to kill. Taking the top spores off doesn't do a whole lot of anything. We had to deal with mold when we lived in Cleveland before we moved to Indianapolis. There was a duplex we lived in for just less than a year, actually, and slab duplex. The lady owned it, remodeled it, and when we moved in, it was, live and learn, I guess, but had only lived there for probably about 6 months, and I went to move Eddie's gun cabinet to kind of rearrange the living room a little bit and pulled the gun cabinet out, and the wall behind it was just covered in black mold. So got to digging around through the house and found out in that short amount of time the damage was just phenomenal. Also, during that time, because we weren't sure what was going on, our oldest daughter, Kelly, ended up in the hospital and wasn't sure what was going on there either. She couldn't breathe. They couldn't get oxygen into her body. They thought maybe she had a hole in her heart. It was a very, very stressful period of time because, quite honestly, we didn't think we thought we were going to lose her. And it turns out that the sickness that she had was caused by the mold in the duplex that we lived in. So we made, first things we did was we had somebody come in that was experienced in dealing with it, who told us it was the worst case of mold where people were actually living in the house. When he got to digging around in through the walls and stuff, there was mold so bad in the attic and within the walls where the landlord just wallpapered over, that it was unbelievable from the pictures that he showed us. I mean, just the attic itself was just covered in the stuff. So we made a conscious choice to anything that could hold mold spores, we ended up throwing away. Mattresses, couches, clothing, anything. And we left and found another place to recover in. And I know there's people out there dealing with this stuff on a regular basis. I sought at that time alternative medical advice from a naturopath, and one of the items they put Callie on to help her recover was black walnut, and it was a syrup. It was the most disgusting thing that you will probably ever ingest, but it did help clean the mold out of her system. She spent quite a few years with an asthma inhaler, and just here probably in the last 5 years or so has been completely removed from that. So can you recover? Yes. Learn the symptoms of it. If you see it in your house, you need to look at your family members and make sure that they're okay. Like I said, when we took Callie into the hospital, we had no idea what was going on. And the doctors were quite concerned that she wasn't going to make it, to the point they didn't know what was going on. They thought she had a hole in her heart. So definitely a scary time. But thieves oil have tested it out on mold growth and was personally tested it out. So I have firsthand knowledge. I've seen it stop the growth of mold. So definitely check it out in your situation. Like I said, I'm not a doctor or anything like that. So just some information that I'm sharing with you. But again, thieves oil, equal parts eucalyptus, rosemary, cinnamon, clove, and lemon. And then you can mix it to keep it straight. It is a hot oil, so be very careful with it. But usually you could mix it with a carrier oil like olive oil if you're going to apply it on your skin or anything like that. I've used it for all kinds of things because it does smell good. But I know the brand that I use, they make household cleaners with it, and you can buy it straight, the oil itself concentrated, and a plethora of things that you can use it for. Definitely something that I have stored up in case of a pandemic, I assure you of that. Another thing that you need to look at too is electrolytes. I know people talk about Gatorade and things like that, especially when someone's sick and being able to replenish their bodies. But there are recipes out there that you can use in order to make your own that might be easier to stock the ingredients than just buying jugs and jugs of Gatorade, which might, it's questionable whether it's good for you or not. But, you have basically the components you need. Of course, water, sea salt, baking soda, and then you can get some kind of sugar-free drink flavoring to put in it so it's not quite so bland. You can also add some lemon juice into it, some raw honey. You're going to have to come up with your own recipe. There are plenty out there. Google it. but find a recipe that your family likes, and make sure that you've written down the recipe as part of your preps. That way, if something happens to you, your family knows how to use it. And then you can just stock the ingredients. It's probably going to be a lot easier to store sea salt and baking soda than jugs and jugs of Gatorade. But just make sure somebody in your house besides you knows how to make the stuff in case you do need it. But like I said, make the decision consciously for yourself on how you're going to protect your family. Make sure if you do work outside the home, that your place of employment has a plan in place, and if they do, what it is. Find out what your community has for an emergency plan for a pandemic. Are they planning on herding people to a centralized location? It's not your best option, I can assure you that. You're going to want people to be spread out and away from each other. Set up a room in your house that you can utilize for any kind of sickness. And make sure if you're going to close off your house, put plastic over your windows. It's just extra precautions. You're going to need to look at air filtration from the outside also. So how is air being filtered in from the outside through your furnace, through your air conditioner, anything like that? Do you have extra filters on hand if you need them? And then make sure that you have plenty of food, plenty of water, alternative medical supplies, over-the-counter stuff, extra prescriptions if you need them. And then, how are you going to protect yourself? You got a pandemic going on. People are going to get desperate. Just let alone the food riots that are going to occur if a majority of the population goes down sick. The trucks aren't going to be able to move. People aren't going to be working in the grocery stores. That's another good reason to have your own food supplies at home so you don't have to go out. But people are going to panic. And when people panic because they're sick, their family members are dying, they don't feel good, and they're hungry on top of that, if there's a sustained riot out there that causes issues, hunger is probably the one that sets people over the edge the best, and the fastest, and the longest. So, how are you going to protect yourself? Do you have a means of securing firearms and ammunition? And then, what's the plan if somebody does come to your house? What if you've got your house secure, your family inside, you're set up, and you get a knock at the door? What are you going to do? Are you going to be able to turn the person away? You need to really stop and think about these things before they actually happen. If it's my neighbor, Mr. Jiggly over here, won't even answer the door. But does not mean it's going to stop him and make him go home. Because based upon his previous actions, he's probably going to beat down the door. But what happens if it's your brother or your sister and their family? Are you going to be able to turn them away? Have you talked to them about any of this? It's a concern, especially right now, and I again cannot stress this enough about OPSEC and making sure that there are people out there that don't know what you're doing. Because the government seems to be setting itself up to police us in every way possible, and turning people against other people and turning them into the police. Oh my goodness, they have a stash of MREs and gas masks and everything else. These people that go on Doomsday Preppers just astound me with releasing information that they should be keeping private. I did watch it last week and was startled. Within 2 minutes of people coming on to Doomsday Prepper, I could tell you exactly where they live. And now I know what their plan is. I know how to get into their attic if I wanted to. Where that they have food supplies. It's like people need to stop and think about what they're doing. Please consider OPSEC top priority right now. That being said, can you still have conversations about being prepared with people out there? Yes, you can, to a certain degree. Just make sure you don't release your whole hand. But you can open dialogue by saying, did you hear about the Ebola thing in the news? What do you think about that? What would you do if, something happened? Or maybe it's not a bad idea to, and start raising questions and dialogue with family members. I wouldn't do it with strangers on the street. But if it's your sister over for a visit, bring up the topic. Use the stuff in the news because, if they're watching the news at all, they have had to have seen this. Whether it's mainstream media or not, I mean, there's plenty of information on it that's out there to scare the hell out of people right now. So, begin those conversations before it's too late. Do it now. Just like your food preps, you need to get those in line now and not too late. If you do work outside the home and travel, just make sure that you have a plan. If there is a pandemic, coming out of Africa, airports are a hot topic right now on what's going on. So even before this, anytime you fly, you're just breathing recycled air from whatever's going on in the plane. So definitely something to pay attention to. I've stopped flying altogether. We lived in Cleveland. It's Cleveland. So when I had to leave for business, I had to fly everywhere. I just drive now. It takes me longer, but that's the choice that I've made. But if you do take that choice, make sure that you have your vehicle set up and prepared too. Some things to keep in your vehicle: flashlight, self-defense tools, such as pepper spray, stun guns, those things. But make sure that you know the state laws if you're traveling through multiple states. Dig in to do some research to make sure you're not breaking any laws there in case you do get pulled over. Extra batteries, a first aid kit, pocket knife, sleeping bags or blankets. How many people last winter could have used those? And they don't take up a whole lot of space. Extra clothing. If it's winter time, you're going to need gloves, those kind of things. Shoes, walking shoes, hiking boots. There was a report a gentleman had left work in his suit, hit the blizzard, decided to walk home, ended up losing his toes because his dress shoes could not handle the cold and the snow. Always good to have some kind of waterproof material, poncho, a tarp, anything like that. And then a metal coffee can. You can utilize that to boil water, and if you have to, but you can also use it to store other items. I will post some links up today on other items that you can keep in your vehicle in order to keep it, make yourself safe if you're traveling and whatnot. Can you keep an extra gas can in your truck? Yeah, I do. Do not fill it with gas, though. If you do have to travel with gas, look at if you have to put it on the outside of your vehicle, but that's going to point you out like a sore thumb. So just conscious choice that you're going to have to make yourself. But we're down to 5 minutes, and one thing that I wanted to get into, and we might need to save this for another day, is we've talked about permaculture in the past, and we talked about the issues with HOAs and living in a suburb or anything like that, and the fact that they frown upon, and it's against the law in many communities, to have any kind of garden unless it's hidden in your backyard. And sometimes even then that's questionable. On top of that, in order to have a food supply after your dehydrated and freeze-dried food runs out, you need to have a supply of seeds and store them for long-term use, whether it be vacuum sealed and in the freezer, or you need to also educate yourself on harvesting seeds. But one vegetable that I would like you to look at in specific, and we have them growing in our garden, is a sunchoke or Jerusalem artichoke. And why would you do this? Because it does take the place of a potato. So if you're looking to an alternate means of a potato, a sunchoke or Jerusalem artichoke is a perennial vegetable that will come back year after year. Heads up, though, it is quite invasive in your garden. So you will need to plant it over by itself somewhere and give it its own room. But you harvest the tubers at the bottom of it. It grows 6-10 feet tall in the summertime. Towards the fall, it gets a flower on it. Looks like a sunflower. Really cute. And then you can harvest the tubers at the bottom. You can fry them up, like you would a potato. You cook them, though they do get a little mushy. But definitely something to look at. Could you plant this in your garden? Could you plant it around your house? I would say probably yes, because it does look like a sunflower. It's deceivable with the outside populace because they wouldn't know what it is unless they're have specific knowledge with this plant. But now you have something that looks like a sunflower in your garden that you can utilize the same way you would a potato. It's a perennial, so it will come back. Anytime those little tubers have a little chunk somewhere, they're going to make new plants. I mean, it's that hardy. It's kind of like hosta. You know how invasive hostas can be. Time you get a little bit of that tuber somewhere, it's got a new plant. Now, certain ground moles and things like that will like the tuber, but on the benefit side of that, when they eat it, wherever they leave a little bit of that tuber, you'll get a new plant from. I know last year we had them, among other things, going all through our yard because of the squirrels and whatnot. But we found sunflower seeds spread out through our yard, tomatoes. The squirrels and chipmunks will eat these things and then do the little thing, fertilize it for us, and deposit all over the yard for us. So it's always a surprise sometimes where we end up having vegetables. But it's definitely a good thing to have. I will see you guys tonight. Stay safe out there. Keep your eyes open.